For years, dads in the media have been portrayed as fools and bumbling idiots, the constant butt of jokes. But according to a mountain of statistics, dads are one of the most stabilizing factors in a home and in the futures of their children. Hi, I'm Colin Lambert, and this is the Dad Ain't No Joke podcast. Our mission's simple: change the narrative about dads. Feature dads who are doing their best to serve their families and build a community of dads committed to those they love. Each episode will seek to have quality conversations with dads who are known or unknown about their highest highs and lowest lows, and with experts in the field who can share some of the most important elements dads bring to the family. Dad, one of the most challenging and rewarding jobs in the world.
Well, Tim McDermott is an interesting character. He's both a broadcaster and a CPA. I don't normally think of those things together, but if you get a chance to spend some time with him, you'll know that it actually works. 40 years in the broadcasting business, 27 years as president and general manager of KSBJ in Houston, one of the most decorated and revered Christian organizations in the country. Much of that because of his leadership. He's been in numerous industry positions, NRB radio chair, founding chairman of Christian Music Broadcasters, has been currently serves on the NRB executive committee. 20 years, he's continued to host weekly worship radio, including his program Enter His Gates, and again, a CPA at the same time. And I don't always think of those things going together, but with Tim, they do. Tim, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Colin. It's a joy to connect with you. I thank you for all the great comments there, but I've admired you for years too. We both worked together in Austin and radio, so it's great to connect with you via this podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Let's start with your family structure. I always like to kind of start there so people who are listening can understand who you're dealing with, who's in the home, how long have you been married, about kids and grandkids, and then we'll kind of touch on some of your fathering experiences.
Sure. I have been married to my wife, Trudy, for 41 years. And again, people ask me, a lot of work on my side. I mean, it's easy. Her part's so easy. I mean, it's I like to have fun. So I'm a fun CPA, but
yes, you are.
Been blessed. Met her in radio up in Tulsa. So we met there. She was actually the secretary for Bob Lepine and Paul Martin and other folks, Dennis Worden and other people in radio. So I met her up there. Great story. I'm not sure we'll get to it, but when I first asked her out, she said yes. I asked her out again. She said no. But I wore her down, and I'm thankful that she did say yes. And we've been married for, again, 41 years. We're blessed with 3 daughters. They're all married now. Darcy is the oldest one. She is 39. We have Sarah, who is she is 33 years old. And then Michelle, our youngest, is 28 years old. They're all married. They're all married Christian guys. And then from Darcy and Greg, we have 3 grandbabies there. And then we have 4. Sarah has a husband and 4 kids and 3 dogs. So that's just amazing. So
you've got a little bit of everything.
And Michelle just got married just a few months ago. So I felt like I gave away 2 kids. I thought, I gave away 2. I wanted to keep the third one for myself. You get older and need people take care of the kids and stuff.
Right.
But eventually I had to give her away 2 back in March. So she's married a great Christian guy. So we're blessed. 3 married daughters and 7 grandbabies.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's go way back to the early days, Tim, and talk for a moment about family thoughts as a young married couple. You kind of talked about meeting your wife and this back and forth. Want you to go out? Yes. Want you to go out? No. Finally got that taken care of. Did you all, once you were married, did you talk about size of family? Did you think about boys and girls? What kind of things did you all talk about related to a family as you started your young married life?
Yeah, that's a great question, Colin. We I guess we were friends for a year. So it was we both worked I was in a DJ in radio at KCFO in Tulsa. Trudy was a receptionist. Again, she was dating another DJ actually at the time. And he was my roommate really strange. Came home one night and they broke up. And he said, I think Trudy and you'll be perfect. So he was right. He was very right. So we got together and we dated. We dated for 4 months and we talked about stuff. And I was a 21-year-old graduating from college. And I knew I wanted to stay in radio and she loved radio. And so we talked about those questions about size of our family. Probably the biggest challenge for us was we were both Christian people. Her family was all Southern Baptist. I was raised all kinds of stuff. I was raised Methodist and Bible fellowship and Nazarene. So that took us some time. Our biggest adjustment was really working through as a Christian, we both love Jesus, but there were some differences there on how to worship, just our faith being in practice. So that was a real challenge for us for really our first part of our marriage. So but we decided, Trudy and I talked about the fact that one thing we really wanted to do is we both love the Lord and we wanted to have a family early. We wanted to allow enough space there that people wouldn't ask any questions later on. So we allowed about a year and something to go by. And then we wanted to be parents. And we thought, let's be parents who are not just, I had older parents. Trudy's parents weren't as old, but mine were older. And so if I wanted to do things with dad and mom growing up, dad, remember one time in Myrtle Beach, we went to a Tildo Whirl and dad was offered to get on the ride with me. He did. And he was sick the rest of the entire vacation. So it was just terrible. So we wanted to be young parents. We wanted to experience life. Let's be young parents. So we didn't spend a long time after we were married, before we had children. We had Darcy, and it was awesome. But then at the same time, my job changed. So all the stress of having a baby and providing was on top of that. But Darcy was a great baby. We went to job interviews and she traveled with us in the car, and it was a blessing. So I think it was intentional. We talked about number of kids. We wanted to have 5. Our desire was, and we talked about this before we got married, we wanted 5 children. And as it turned out, we had Darcy and Sarah, and then we had 2 miscarriages. And then Michelle was born later on. So in my mind, I believe, although I have 3 girls on this side, I'm believing those 2 miscarriages, and they were about a couple, 3 months into her pregnancy. I believe they were boys. And I get to heaven, there's gonna be a little kid up there with a baseball glove on and a baseball bat and say, Dad, Dad. And I'll turn and I'll look at him, and I've already have a name for him. And I'll say, hey, Nathan. So I'm believing that once we're in heaven, I'm gonna see my other children, those 2 boys.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's stick for a moment with kind of that timetable of those early years. I've talked to a lot of dads about those first moments of becoming a dad. You talked about the desire to be a dad. When it finally happened, Trudy's pregnant, it's coming. Any thoughts, any fears, any reservations? How did you feel about it?
Well, here's my tip. I tell people this at the hospital: get the lifetime warranty on the children. So make sure, get the extended warranty, pay extra for it. It's worth having that. So that way there's problems, you can take them back, get things fixed, physical, mental. No, I'm just teasing.
We wish.
I think for me, it was like having girls was really, I have a brother. So my dad was raised in South Philadelphia. So not known for its compassion as being a city, although it's brotherly love, I think it's just the name. So I was raised with a pretty strict dad who was pretty quick with a belt and had things his way and kind of ruled the house. My mom was more the protective one of my brother and I. So I think all of us have no experience being dads. So it was like, what do you do? And we got, of all things, being a girl too. So I thought, I have no idea what's going to go on. The other thing that helped me is, as a kid growing up, I had some girl cousins, and I became real close to them. And at the time, I had lots of cousins, but for some reason, my cousins, Debbie, Diane, Dawn, Denise, my 4 girl cousins, were like my best friends growing up. We hung out together. My parents traveled out of town. We got to spend time together, and I was at their house hanging out, and we had fun. So I think that helped me prepare me in some sense. But yeah, it's like I learned even as a dad that when you're in the dad position, your words really speak loudly. Just if you're a boss, whatever you say speaks extra loud. When you're a dad, your words speak extra loud. It's like almost like they're punches. And if they're to girls, they're really hard. So you have to be really careful. And again, I look at my girls, Darcy, Sarah, Michelle, and there's about an 11-year gap between the oldest and youngest. We do a thing with our kids every year. Every birthday, every person's birthday in our family is, we make everyone else in the family say something nice about that person. So about a few years ago, it was my birthday, and Michelle, our youngest, when it came time for her to speak, she said, Dad's great. I love Dad. He's a great listener. He's understanding. He's kind. He's encouraging. And the oldest daughter looked at the youngest daughter with this perplexed, look in her face. Darcy said, Dad? So, I mean, I think there's mistakes you make. With the first one, it's like you get them home and you do this stuff, and you're kind of like you're learning how to be a dad. And so how to discipline your discipline your children. And for a girl, it's really more of a challenge, because my dad, to the sons, he used belts and things, and these girls, they're fragile, and the words mean a lot. My wife could be upset with my daughter, any of them, and yell at them and scream and things like that, which are unlike my wife. But she got mad. She would say things to them, and they would just blow it off. But I would just look at my daughter, and it's like I wasn't happy, and all of a sudden their eyes would get watery and their lips start puckering, and like, oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. It's like they just break down. It's like, what do you do? So it's so different. But yeah, having girls was different. And that first one, I learned a lot. I learned from my first daughter to my third one. In fact, it's so funny, as a person, a part of that CPA thing is that wanting to be a good dad, you want the kids to be raised right. I'm always correcting. But at some point when the kids get older, there's a shift that goes on from correcting and stuff to being a coach and being a fan. And I learned that with Darcy. I think for her, I was always correcting her. And then remember when she was 16, I went to her, one time she was very upset. I had gotten on to her, correcting her, and I went up to her room, and she was upset and she was crying. And I said, Darcy, what's going on? She says, Dad, I know you've been correcting me a lot, but what I really need from you right now is just to be my dad. And that really got me. That's like, man, I got to move out of this correcting. They aren't 4-year-old kids anymore. These are people becoming eventually young adults, and it's a different kind of dad. So I think I learned some lessons. So I apologize. I'm sure Darcy's watching this. I apologize because we're learning from the first child. So hopefully the second one is better. The third one, I'm a little more freedom as far as just things that the kids do, and just learning to be a better dad by daughter number 3.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because I think often we do learn as we go along. I had 2 boys and then a girl, so I was really used to the boy thing before the girl came along, and like you, trying to figure out how to handle that differently and receiving some of the same responses that you did. I mean, boys and girls are just very different, and then each child is different, and unfortunately, there always seems to be one like you, at least, and I've got one like me. So there was always the butting of heads, that we were so much alike, and one more like the mom. And so, those kinds of things are always challenges. But thank you for being willing to share that, because I think we all, as we go through that process, can recognize that. Before we move to kind of the college marriage time frame, middle school, high school, you had 3 girls. Traditionally, they tend to be a little less of a challenge. Boys seem to want to rebel more sometimes than young women. Not always the case, but certainly sometimes the case. Any major challenges during high school, middle school, high school, things that you just had to say, hey, sit down and have a tough talk with any of them?
Yeah, I think my wife's like a sister to them. She was very involved in their lives. So we were living life with them. We were very careful about their friends. So we did sometimes we were careful. I mean, even for us as parents, we were careful the friends we had, because the friends we have have kids, and the kids have that's going to impact our lives. So we were careful, but I think it's really interesting that we actually were blessed. And it sounds like ivory tower stuff. But our kids were really good. Our kids didn't really. None of them openly rebelled. I mean, there's some strong-willed kids in there. I'm not saying that at all, and who express things to us, but none of them really had major problems. One thing I really wanted to do, and my work experience was that if I could pour into my kids more and be around their stuff, be around them, be involved. So it was important to me to think of ways to invest in my kids. And the thought was, the more I invest up front, the less problems later on. So, for instance, at my work, we travel on several mission trips. So I made a point at my expense to take my kids with me. I wanted them to experience the third world. I wanted them to see what the world looks like around them. So I think instilling those values in them made a big difference. I think on Christmas morning, as young kids, our church in Houston used to go to downtown Houston on Christmas morning and go to some poverty areas, third and fourth, fifth ward areas of some really tough parts of Houston. And they would pass out Christmas gifts. We pray for people and stuff. So our kids on Christmas morning, we required them, got them up early before we did our Christmas as a family. We went downtown, went to our church, got the gifts wrapped up, went down there at 6 a.m. And the whole point as a dad is when you get back to the house, and the kids see what happens in the third and fourth and fifth ward, come back to our house and they feel guilty. I'm going, yes, mission accomplished. No, but no, you want to see the kids just get a sense of desiring to serve, to impact other things. So I think that Christian music was a big deal in our family. Living the life as far as me being the same person, that if I made mistakes, when I made mistakes as a dad, I would apologize to them. Our procedure, if we disciplined them, we actually would, after I'd spank them, my wife we'd talk about it. So when we talk about issues with my wife and this person did so and so, and we actually would, I would spend time talking to them. We'd pray it through. So I think a lot of our being blessed with kids who didn't rebel was pouring a lot into them. And our biggest thing we did was that we had family devotions. As corny as black and white they may sound like to people nowadays, we spent time every Sunday night with the girls, and we required them to come around for about 15 minutes, and I would read a portion of scripture, and we'd talk about Queen Esther or something like that. And they really seemed to like that. They'd ask questions, and then we'd talk about the Bible passage, and then we'd pray for each other. And I made them hug and tell their sister they loved them. Whether they did or not, at that moment, they had to say they loved each other. So, but I think those things helped us avoid any major things going on. But we had some tough discussions as far as boys they wanted to go see, and we had requirements on they couldn't date till they were 16. We had rules like that. Had some pretty strict rules. We felt that was better, and so we had some things like that we had some parameters. Then who they hung around with, some kids, if we didn't like that, we talk about this and why you can't have a sleepover at this person's house. We don't know their parents, don't know who they are, so we're not comfortable there. So we really wanted to have them around church kids, church friends. Even there, we wanted to know who the people were, because even church people can be who knows what. But we really were. We were. I think the whole being younger parents, we live life a lot with the kids. And when I messed up, I said, Darcy, I messed up. Would you forgive Dad? Kind of stuff. So that helped. There wasn't any kind of major walking out of the house. And I think as I grew up too, my parents, I didn't have any rebellion. Trudy grew up in a family that there wasn't a situation that she didn't rebel against her mom and dad kind of thing. So I think we didn't really have any major things. So blessed, and even still, all of us get along really well. So the families get along even as they're older. It's just been really a blessing. So sorry to disappoint people.
I think we all experience life differently. We all bring different things to the table as parents, but I think even in the midst of you sharing, I was one of those kids that truly, I believe, accepted Christ at the age of 7. It wasn't like I had any dramatic testimony. And for years, I always kind of regretted not having a dramatic testimony that I was, into drugs or did this or that. And, the Lord dramatically saved me. Well, any kind of salvation to me is dramatic. But I also learned along the way and was told by some people who had dramatic salvation experiences, thank the Lord that you didn't have to go through some of the things that I did to find that salvation. And so, thank goodness that you didn't have to go through some of those things as a parent, and that the Lord allowed you to parent in a way and for those girls to receive in a way that that helped make it a little smoother path all along the way. And I do appreciate you mentioning the forgiveness, the asking, the apologizing, the forgiveness. I think that, to me, in our culture, that's one of the biggest issues that people face, an underlying issue of unforgiveness or of anger against somebody, bitterness, roots of bitterness that, never get resolved because someone will not apologize for something or ask forgiveness for something. So I think that's key.
The story, I think my wife probably had more, if she were on this with me, had more, probably because she was like a sister to a more emotional things going on. In fact, the third one, we didn't tell the story until she was past 21, but the first 5 years of our youngest daughter, she was a strong-willed child. We had Darcy and Sarah, and we'd see other relatives, we'd see other friends, and parenting, these kids are like compliant, they're good. And then God gave us Michelle. And Michelle was our strong-willed child. She's a great lad. I love Michelle. She's a school teacher. In fact, we never thought she'd be a school teacher. This surprised us. We thought she would be artistic and do things, but she has been doing a great job as a school teacher in the Houston area. So she's phenomenal. But she was tough. She was the one that was rebelling. So I see my wife and her fighting quite a bit. They fought a lot. And so what happened was, about when Michelle was 5, my wife started getting these issues. Her head started hurting, painful stuff. So we went, it was the point where it got really serious, and we went to a medical doctor who referred us to a neurosurgeon. It was scary. And he actually told my wife that she would require brain surgery. There were some nerves over her eye, right about here, he had some term about the whole thing, and these are all tangled up, and somehow your brain, these wires have gotten crisscrossed, and we have to kind of put you on this device and go prop you upside down and go in and untangle these things. And it was really like, wow, this is incredible. But the pain was my wife's pain was just too much. And then, so we said, we'll get a second opinion. It was about August when she was 5. And then that August, Michelle had her first time to go to school. She went to kindergarten. And the day she hopped on the bus to go to kindergarten is the exact same day my wife's pain went away. So it never came back. So
wow.
Obviously the stress was just
things were a little tense.
But we agreed, we're not telling Michelle that story until she's much older. We want her to know that you're almost the reason Mom had brain surgery. But I think that part is as a husband, as a dad, is supporting your wife during things like that. Because I think my wife being with the girls and doing things like that was her life. She loves the kids, and there's more of an attachment. For me, is like I didn't really get all this stuff going on. So I have to be careful. Always, it's so funny that because you have girls and their cycles can line up too. So they're always 2 days a month. They say when women are around, it all goes together. So there were 2 days a month. I had to really be careful and just walk in, and you see a girl having a meltdown, and you go, oh, it's October 15th. I know what's going on. So you have to kind of, as a guy, of course, as a guys, we never tell that to a woman, a wife, or our daughter. Oh, right. We know what's going on.
Right.
But it's reality that the girls have issues and things happen. And I thought, 2 days, she's upset with her mom or upset with something. She'll be back. She'll be back to normal in 2 days. So, and that's normally. So I think if you learn as a dad when to choose your battles, not to get involved in things, you have to kind of step back and think, okay, what's going on here? But of course, you never say it. Never say it. Never say it. Even to your wife, you never say it. You understanding, grace, love, put your arms around them. And I think I've learned too that with kids, as a dad, that the same things we're told as husbands for our wives, we have to also put in place to our daughters. So at times, girls like to vent. Guys like to fix things. So At times, our daughter just wants to vent and just not have me as a dad want to fix it. She just wants to blow off some steam, just listen and say, oh, man, that sounds really painful. So it's same thing, wife and vet. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. Hey, let's shift to kind of the college years into the marriage years. You have one that just got married not too long ago, but you've now been through 3 of these relationship, engagement, marriages. Talk for just a moment as a dad about that process of wanting the best young man for your daughter. What did you all do, if anything, actively in that process? Were you engaged at all with these young men, and just about that process of those young women finding their husbands?
Well, that's a great question to get to. The oldest one, Darcy, she went off to school at North Texas, and she met her husband there. But we've been praying for a long time. I wanted 2 things. I wanted a person who would love God and love my daughter. That was my 2 requirements, and someone who's passionate about her. So we would pray for those things, and a strong Christian man who loved her. And I think until I got to Michelle, I had 5 things on my list. It was love God, love her, be honest with us, be pure, and have a job. So there were several people. It's so funny. One of the guys, one of her boyfriends, told me, I had made these things up. They were totally made up on, here's my criteria. In fact, I was at a men's conference, KSBJ, with Tony Dungy. I was on stage, and I had shared, someone asked me about my daughter. I said, I had these 5 made up things. And I shared those 5 points. And I shared it with one of her boyfriends. And when he told me I told him those 5 things. He said, your bar is way too high. You will never find anybody who can meet those 5 things. I'm thinking, love God, love my daughter, be honest, sexually pure with her, and then have a job. Oh, have a job. I don't know, but it's like, that's the bar is too high. But apparently this young man told me that, but he broke up with her and moved on. So, but yeah, I think the whole thing was, we didn't get really involved. I think again, it's nice to have sisters involved in what's going on, but I think meeting all 3 men that our kids have married love God and love our daughters. And that's been the biggest thing for us, but we didn't get involved too much in that. I think if they had questions, what's going on, I've been the one, I'll share this insight. I have said this for a long time, and I said it kind of tongue in cheek, but also being real. I've told all my daughters growing up, boys are bad. Boys are bad. And I said to them, I was blessed to be an honor student in high school. I graduated near the top of my class. I have been a Christian since I was 9 years old. I have been with Christian guys. So I spent time during the teenage years prepping them for how guys think. And they're like, no, Dad, guys don't think that way. I said, yes, they do. I said, Every Man's Battle is a book out there because men deal with lust and issues. So how you dress matters. And so I had with my wife there too, very open discussions with my daughters about guys, not to scare them, but also just to not make them think, oh, he's a Christian, he's going to be good. So I really wanted to make that a point with my daughters, that how guys think. So we had very open discussions. So before those years came, they'd ask me questions because I was the only guy in the family. So I would tell them, or how guys think. And my wife had perceptions how men should treat women. She was very strong about the guy should ask you out, the guy should call you, these kind of things. So she had some things she brought to that. But I was pretty much had given up background. So maybe these guys, they knew this was Dad's criteria. And part of it, they also knew that the guys would have to ask permission for me to marry their daughter, my daughter. And the first 2 guys, it was great. They took me out. In fact, the one, it was bad. Greg, we loved Greg, and he got to know him and his family, and just loved Greg and Darcy. And so my wife and I, we had planned a joke on Greg that when he took us out for a restaurant, we planned that when he asked the question, I'd like to marry your daughter, we decided to say at the restaurant, we're going to get up out of our seats and say, can we talk about it? We'll be right back. So he buys us this meal. He says, I love your daughter. I'm praying about it. I'd love to marry her. And I looked at Teresa and said, oh, wow, we'll be right back. So we walked up and went to another part of the restaurant and stood there for like a few just to make him nervous, which was great. But we loved him, and it was a yes, of course. And then Nathan, the same way. He took me out, same thing. Loved God and just great. So we got to know him better, hung out with him, did family events. Our family's been really close. It's true. You marry someone, you marry the family. So we made a point to really get to know Nathan. We knew, in fact, his parents were actually in my Sunday school class. His dad's actually a preacher, great Christian man, his wife, just all immigrants. So then Michelle, we had some dating. We had some guys there, and I won't get into too much, but the one guy did ask for permission to marry Michelle, and there wasn't that same connection. We felt like he was the right one. So we got pretty aggressive in the sense that we haven't done this the first two. And again, the bar wasn't that high, we thought, but this guy was not, in our mind, connecting. And the guy's a good guy, but we didn't think he was right for her. So we had scripture verses under her bed. We had praise course. When she left the room to go work that day, go to school, we were praying in her room that the guy would just break through and just separate this relationship. We just think they dated for a while. Mm-hmm. And she's older. She could have married someone, but all the kids could have married who they wanted to, but they wanted my blessing, which is a nice thing. But the reason this guy gave to marry our daughter were not the ones that I would have hoped that someone would have said. They weren't I love God and praying about, love your daughter. They were just things that it just makes, help my job. I'll look good at my job, and your daughter's been nagging me to marry her. Just like, okay, that doesn't hit the bar very well. So yeah. I told him no. Yeah. I told him no. And my daughter, it didn't work out at all, but that was tough because again, I knew there's a risk there that, she's over 21 at this point. She can take off and do what she wants to do. And the guy's a good guy. I think he's a really good young Christian man, but it just wasn't, we didn't feel a peace about those two. And so when it came time for her blessing, I did say no. And eventually they broke it off. And then she found later on, and to her credit, she got fully involved in her job and went back to school and did some things and really her life complete. And about a year or so ago, God brought a great man into her life that we were very pleased with, that really treated her well. And she's experiencing what a true man of God can be for her. And I think now, I think she can see the benefit of that versus before. And we're through on this. This young man asked his permission. It was a slam dunk. Yes. Again, in my mind, the bar isn't high, but I'm not 21 or 22 or 23 anymore. So, but yeah, that whole process, they had all of them had to ask me for permission, and then we did it. We gave all three girls away. So,
wow, those are incredible stories. Thank you for sharing, because I do think, again, with all three kids being different, and however many kids you have, they all tend to be different. They're looking for different types of mates. They have different personalities. You're going to have to deal with all of that. And if you're a believer, you're wanting that best for your son or your daughter. And just thank you for sharing some of those tips. I think it's valuable to people listening about that process. I have one married, looking for two more at some point, so I'm taking notes as well. So be sure to know that. A couple of more questions. I know you've got 7 grandkids. They say it's the best job on earth. You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It really is the best job, because it's a whole different relationship. I mentioned before with Darcy and the kids, I was correcting them and always around them and watching them constantly, and really doing it too much with Darcy, and probably Sarah as time went on as well too. But I think that's the grandkids. You want to basically keep them safe, keep them alive, and that's really the whole. Keep them, and that's the main thing. Keep them alive. So basically, they come to our house, or we take them to the state fair or the rodeo or someplace, and you feed them sugar and stuff, and then you get them all filled with candy, and you give them back.
Send them back.
You're done. And it's like your job was done. So you love on them. In fact, they were here at our house. Our kids came over here, all of them, and they get along. So our grandkids get along so well. These cousins have really connected. So they came over our house one night. This is like 2 weeks ago, and they were yelling and screaming. in our playroom. So I walked in there and I went, hey, 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 hey. And the kids, you could feel the fear, just my voice just walking in. I said, hey, I have a problem with y'all. And I looked at me, their eyes are big. I said, you aren't being loud enough. What's the deal? And they all just screamed and stuff. So, but it's been so much fun. I mean, it really is that responsibility. I mean, being a grandparent, just have fun with them, play with them, spoil them. But then you're done. There's not that sense that you're having to watch them over nights and weeks and stuff, and that responsibility. Now you do. I still feel as a Christian man, and we have kids from Bauer being 10 to down to 2. So I mean, there's a responsibility to have fun, talk to them. I really, it's kind of a weird deal. They're into technology more. So back when I was a kid, we played outside. But these kids like to play on their devices, so it's different. So I've had more fun with them. Like I tell them one of our kids has a dog, and so we had a crate up in our house, and we don't have a dog. So our granddaughter came over and she's looking. I said, we have an imaginary dog. I said, it's somewhere in the house. So they've had more fun with that. I get my corny radio jokes in. I have my banana phone. I have to answer the phone. Hello, and I said, Grandpa. So I got to do all that stuff. But it's been just a blast, and being with them and just loving on them and being their friend. And I'm so glad that I know at least one of our daughters, I'm not sure all of them do, but they carried on the tradition of Sunday devotions as well too. And the kids have come to know Jesus, and we're going to go to a baptism. I think one of them got saved just recently and be baptized next Sunday. So it's just cool. The biggest joy isn't just giving your kids as a parent or as a person, as two people. Our joy is being able to have children. But the biggest joy as a grandparent is to see, as a parent, the biggest joy as a parent is to see your children carry on the Christian faith and to birth the life of Jesus into our grandkids. So to see our kids not just raised because they have to and they're trying to follow us and mom and dad always did this, but to see our kids loving Jesus and then to pass that on. So our biggest thing we want now for our grandkids is to see all 7 grandbabies and those still to come give their hearts to Jesus. Yeah. So I did tell each girl I wanted 5 kids per daughter. So they told me, Dad, we're not doing that. So
you're well on your way.
I said, Sarah has 4, one more, Darcy has 2, and Michelle's just getting started. Plenty of time.
There you go. There you go. Hey, in our final moments here, Tim, someone listening or watching today and maybe new to being a dad or thinking about being a dad, desire to be a dad, you've shared a number of really good tips along the way, but just as we kind of synthesize it down here at the end, maybe a word or two of advice to a man. I think one of the things we often get engaged with is our careers. You've mentioned that a number of times, and you had 2 really, the CPA and radio. You've talked about discipline issues. You've talked about the issue of forgiveness. Maybe just a couple of minutes here, just share from your heart things you've learned, things that you would encourage a young dad as he begins to step into this adventure.
That's again, it's thank you for that question. It's hard being a dad. There's no instruction book that comes with the kids, and we're living our life. I think the whole thing is for me is really wanting to pray for my kids, and I want the best for my girls. And I think about how God treats me. Our best example as a dad is our Heavenly Father, how He treats us. And I think we have to look at how He's patient, how He's kind, how He's still firm. He doesn't let everything go. He's a God who's holy love. He still there's parameters. So I think that one of our daughters one time, she was involved in, I won't say the name of the program, we all know what it is, but involved in a church program where there's sports where everybody's a winner. Everyone wins. And I remember going there and watching her play, and they're telling her, your team did great. You won. Everyone wins. I said, Michelle, your team lost 42-4. They were keeping score. You didn't win. So I think part of the whole thing with young dads is we want that we allow so much of our kids that we forget the discipline, and there's the fact that there are parameters, but we really have to check our hearts. I think every time before I spanked our daughters, and back when they were little, I always talked to my wife, and I think that's a takeaway too. Is as a dad, I think it's good. Sometimes we let pride set in. I know I'm guilty of this. About we know how it's done because our dad did it this way. Well, my wife had a dad too, and he raised her a certain way. So we have to really be open about our dad's style. So I think asking our wife, how am I doing as a dad? How would you give me some tips? Give me some not negative things. What am I doing right? They tell you in like when you critique people, what should I start doing, keep doing, and start, stop, and keep doing? So what should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What should I continue doing? So I think it's those kind of things. So my wife would love it. If I had one-on-one, I would take my daughters out, and I love just talking to them, just hanging out, just always remain approachable. That I wanted them to know that any topic, any issue that they face, I'm here for them. And I'm going to give them, having 3 daughters, from a man's perspective. I'm going to tell you what guys are thinking. And I'll be open and honest with you what is going on. So keep the approachability open. Talk to your spouse about it. Press into God. Never, ever act out of emotion with your kids. The words we say as a dad can have a lifelong impact on our kids. So we have to be really careful the words we say. So that's why before I would spank the kids, I talked to my wife. I have to say, go to your room right now. I go talk to Trudy and say, okay, here's what's going on. And we actually talked about next steps. So, but not to ever emotion. My dad would let the belt fly and fit of rage. I wanted to see it done. And I always say, I love you. This hurts me when I have to discipline you, but my heart's to see you become a strong woman of God. And so that process to make sure we don't ever act out of emotion, never hurting them at all, but in love, wanting to see what's best for them. But I think also, again, make mistakes, just let them know. If sometimes we'll see something and I'll be more quick. I'm quicker to judge things than my wife is, and I'll think the kid's doing something wrong, and my wife might know why. So I may act in haste to make a decision. So it's good to ask questions too, as well. Some of the principles about that, we can ask questions. Yeah, include them in your life. Be approachable. Never blow them off. Follow through on things. For me, it's being the same consistent person. When the kids have talked about this, that good, bad, or ugly, whatever, I'm the same person talking to you right now as I am when the doors are closed, and I don't change or going to church or at the radio station or being a CPA. I want them to see a person who's consistent. So really, it's part of that. You have to, as a man of God, you have to walk the walk, walk the talk. And I think that the kids pick up on how you act, what you're doing as a man. And then it's so funny that, they've all married kids. They've married people, but who are different. But there's qualities in me that they married in their kids and their husbands. So that's been cool. And even the youngest one, Darcy, named her first son after my middle name as well. She was pretty cool as well. So I think we have to walk the walk. This whole thing, when you mess up, don't tell me you're perfect or think you're perfect, and just go on and really invest in life. This whole thing about, I've learned as a boss that if you discipline somebody out of just as a boss, it comes across as harsh. If you discipline somebody out of relationship, it comes about as part of love. So yeah. I think as much as you can, spend time with your kids, hang out with them, pour into them, listen to them, do things they want to do. That's why I think as I didn't share this, but having 3 daughters, I really wished I had a son. I thought if I had a son, I could be doing more sports type things. And Darcy, one time I took her to an Astros game and trying to teach these girls sports, and all 3 guys now like sports, which is pretty cool. But I was teaching the girls sports. I took Darcy to an Astros game, and she was like, I bought her candy and said, watch the whole game, and it was incredible. I thought this was good. And she says, Dad, this was the best experience. I loved hanging out with you. It was fun being at a game. And she said, now who won the game? So I was going, oh, man. So so different than guys. So I think that's my thing but then, you know what? They all married guys who I could hang out with. So It's been so cool that just because you don't have you have all girls, you wanted boys, it's so cool that maybe in later on in life they get married. I could now the son. In fact, I mentioned earlier that the boy that we wanted to name, if we had one for all the boy-girl names, was Nathan, and our middle daughter married Nathan. So it's like, God gave you my son. How about that?
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Thank you, Tim, so much for sharing today. Appreciate you for many years. Tim McDermott, many years in broadcasting and in the CPA area, and obviously being a dad and now a granddad as well. Thanks for sharing some of your life with us on the podcast.
Thank you, Colin. It was a joy to see you again, and I pray this talk together has helped one man just move forward a bit in his life, to encourage him in his life to keep moving forward, not to give.